there, listeners. His name is Aaron.
And his name is Tommy.
And welcome to episode 10 of the Super Pod Saga, the podcast where Aaron and I are on a quest to talk about every single video game topic. And guess what? I have a new microphone. Our guest from the last episode, Grant, came and visited, and I have a new microphone. So hopefully you hear less of my clicking and keyboarding and turning and stuff like that. So that's exciting. If the sound volume is off, it's because I literally just got this and I'm new to it. But that's neither here nor there. We have a podcast to do, and should we start with our Twitter responses of the week?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so in anticipation of this episode, which is going to be about card games, Aaron asked on the Twitter, if your life was a card game, what would be your ace card? Like the card that absolutely tramples your opponent. And you can read the first one, Aaron, the first response.
Yeah, so the first one was from at Doen2300, and I apologize if I pronounced that wrong, but yeah, he said, "Let's slip the kitty of war."
Nice. I don't know what that means.
Kitties are good though.
At Bit Selector said, our chief weapon is surprise, and fear, which is from is that a Monty Python sketch? Looks like Monty Python.
That or SNL. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
It probably is
like
Monty
that,
Python or
that.
something. At Block Sega said American Express, but and then I replied, "Ah, yes, the God card."
Yeah, that was my favorite response. That's a good one. But yeah, feel free to follow our Twitter, Super Pod Saga. Look out for those questions we ask, because we ask a ton, and if you make a good answer, we'll speak about it on the podcast, and you'll be famous. And everyone wants to be famous.
One of these days. Yes.
As I mentioned a bit earlier, today's topic is card games, video game card games, because that's something that Aaron and I are pretty obsessed with, I would say. We have a long, extensive history of playing card games. And I'm not sure, I was trying to think how to do this, because you could talk about card games one of two ways. You could talk to you, the audience, as if you don't know anything about card games and we have to explain everything, or we explain it in our nerd lingo where Aaron and I understand how things work. I haven't really decided what we're going to do. I guess we'll just find out, but I assume we'll do like some basic explanation stuff, but
yeah.
Feel free to, if it's too much, there's a ton of mechanics and lingo in card games, so if that's not your deal, I understand for not checking it out, but if you are into card games, this is the episode for you. We're going to nerd the heck out.
Also, since it's a card game episode, I'm going to throw in a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh quotes. So get your game on.
Yeah.
That's Yu-Gi-Oh GX.
I don't know anything about Yu-Gi-Oh, so that'll be fun.
All right.
So I've got this split into kind of two sections. I think it would be good to start with, I've got listed for me like my chronology of card games, and so we can just go back and forth, but I wanted to start with physical card games, because I think for us that really started everything for us, because
oh god, yeah,
there weren't a lot of video game card games, but the physical card games were there, and at least for me they definitely influenced my video game card choices. So to start, the first physical card game that I had experience with was the Pokemon card game.
I'm sure most people did.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that was probably the biggest at the beginning. I mean, I wasn't aware of Magic the Gathering growing up, so that might have been bigger. But at least as a kid, it was the Pokemon card game. Did you play a lot of the Pokemon card game? Did you have decks of Pokemon cards?
I collected. I was one of those people that collected the hell out of the game, but never played it because it didn't make a ton of sense to me. But
Yes.
I did play it a few times.
Yeah, same. I like, obviously, the being in love with the Pokemon video games and wanting to like the show, I wanted to get into the card games. But yeah, like you said, none of it made sense. I was obsessed with the video games, and then switching to the card game and trying to learn it was impossible. It was really slow, really boring, and like your Pokemon evolve in the middle of a match, and you have to attach energy to them to use their attacks. I wasn't a fan. I didn't even collect the cards because it was harder to get them in rural Iowa, and it was an expense that wasn't really worth it to me.
The only place I knew of that you could buy Pokemon cards in rural Iowa was really just gas stations. Like Casey's always had them. And what was that one grocery store in Haywarden?
Uh,
Pomida?
yeah, something like that. They
Yeah,
changed it to Fiesta or something. Gosh,
yeah,
what was
they
it?
they sometimes had them.
Yeah, but so yeah, that was not a good introduction to card games for me. But what I'm assuming was a good introduction to card games for you was Yu-Gi-Oh.
Absolutely. Yeah, of course I started off with the show and then yeah, the cards. I got them my first pack I think from Casey's and which for those of you that don't know in the Midwest, the Casey or in the Midwest, Casey's is a branch of gas stations, but they also have really good pizza.
Oh, the best pizza.
Um, oh God, that bacon breakfast pizza, holy shit.
Even just the beef
We're not,
pizza in the afternoon.
I know, we're not talking about pizza though, we're talking about card games. Um, but yeah, so I got my very first pack of Yu-Gi-Oh cards at a gas station. And then from there, it kind of like snowballed because I started buying like the starter decks, and I would just buy more and more packs. And then they came out with those like big tins of cards, and I'd buy those, and oh my God, yeah, yep.
So what was it about the Yu-Gi-Oh game that you liked? Because I have a card game that broke my brain open. What was it about Yu-Gi-Oh that cracked into your brain?
I think it was that you could build a deck out of pretty much anything. Like your imagination really is the limit.
Hmm.
Like in the early days of Yu-Gi-Oh, they didn't have what are called archetypes now, because like nowadays, there's different archetypes which are monsters that follow. Because like there's ones like there's like the Gishkis, there's like the weather painters, stuff like that, like groups of cards with their support cards and monsters and stuff like that. But back in the day, it was just stuff thrown together. Like you can make a deck based on dragon types or what's called burn damage, which are cards that just inflict damage pretty much. Um, or like what's called a mill deck, where you like run out your opponent's deck and then all that stuff. But yeah, really your imagination was the limit, and you could just do anything as opposed to where Pokemon is just like, I have fire Pokemon or
Yeah.
like something like that.
Oh, and not to go back to Pokemon, but just even the typings of the cards didn't make sense sometimes because poison and psychic was the same typing, and fighting and ground was the same typing. It was
Yeah, fighting
so weird.
ground and yeah.
Oh, not cool. I didn't play Yu-Gi-Oh as a kid. I have never played Yu-Gi-Oh. It's confusing, especially as a child, a high schooler or whatever. There's a lot of mechanics, and it's it's hard to get into physical card games. I don't know how to do that even because I mean before then, like back when we were younger, there was the internet, but it wasn't the internet of
Yeah.
today. I couldn't just like Google how to do stuff. You literally had to have the big sheet that explained how to do everything.
Yeah, and it in most card games nowadays too, like even like Magic, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, they're all even more confusing now. It's
Yeah,
especially
yeah.
Yu-Gi-Oh. I'm sure Magic is too, but yeah, they've only gotten wilder as the years went by.
Speaking of Magic, that is the game that broke my brain open. The physical card game. I had a girlfriend who introduced me to it in college, and boy, that just
Ooh,
changed my life because it was the same for me, was having limitless deck possibilities and just being able to like I experimented with all the different cards because she had a bunch, and I was like, I like these green cards and I like these white cards. Why don't I make a deck out of green and white cards? And I was like, I like the big monsters and I like the angels, so I'm gonna do that. And I did it. You
nice.
can whatever you want, and there's endless mechanics and ways to do things. Like it's hard to explain, but that game made me go from card games are stupid and I don't understand them to being like, oh, there's a ton of really cool stuff here. It's like almost solving a puzzle while your opponent is trying to solve a puzzle at the same time and
Yeah.
trying to defeat them. It was really cool. What have you done with Magic?
For the longest time, I had only a blue deck that's centered on like countering stuff, like whether it be like I had what four copies of Unsummon, counter spell, this one sweet ass spell called Boomerang. Oh, and Avanize. Oh my God. Yeah, it was just it was focused entirely on countering the opponent. And
Nice.
then the monsters I had were like mostly like Sphinxes and um, and drakes and stuff like that. But eventually, I made like this sweet black deck that focused on rats and making your opponent discard from their hand. And yeah, that game was real wild as far as like using your imagination goes.
Oh, it's crazy. And I'm just thinking about it now. I feel like my brain was still at that uh Pokemon phase where I was like, big stuff do good. So my deck was like, I make big monsters and I heal myself. When really you could have like all these absolutely insane mechanics and combos and everything. Um, I think what I want to do is actually explain the basic mechanics of Magic the Gathering, because at least for me, all the video game card games that I played are heavily based on and inspired by Magic.
Yeah.
So Magic the Gathering, you have a deck of cards and you have what are called land cards and you have spells, which are either creatures that do attacks and stuff for you or actual spells. And so on your turn, you can play a land down, and that's the source of what is called your mana, which you spend mana to cast spells. So you just throw land cards down, and then you use them to cast spells to bring creatures out there, and you attack your opponent until they're dead. That's the very basic gist of it. Did I miss anything?
Um, did you say you block like you could block attacks of their monsters?
No, yeah. There's the one thing I will say that I don't like about Magic is it is very mechanical in like its turn structure. Like there are 5 or 6 or 7 phases per turn, and you have to go through each one. And like there's the attack phase and the block phase and the upkeep phase and the ending phase and battle phase. It goes on and on. I think Yu-Gi-Oh has that too, but it's like fewer, and there's no lands or mana in Yu-Gi-Oh, right?
Right, yeah.
So Magic, just remember all that stuff I just said about the future. Um,
Okay.
one thing before we get into like the main actual card games, I wanted to ask you about card games that are in other video games, because I know that you're a big fan of those. So I wanted to give you the floor to talk about those. I'm thinking of like Final Fantasy IX, Knights of the Old Republic had one.
Oh hell yeah. There was a couple of those actually that were on my list.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, you know my favorite game ever, Final Fantasy IX. It had a
Mm-hmm.
pretty sweet card game called Tetramaster, and what was it? It was totally a total. Oh my God, what's the?
Nonsense. I think that's the word you're
Yeah,
looking for.
yeah. We'll edit that part out where I stuttered like
No,
really
I'm
hard.
saying the
But
game is nonsense.
oh yeah, I mean it really is. But once you start to learn it, it makes a little more sense, but still kind of nonsensical. So essentially, what is it? It's like a 3 by 3 grid.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you take turns playing cards down, and each card has arrows in the corners and the sides and whatnot. And basically, the whole point of the game is to, I guess, to overpopulate the board with your, or no, I guess to have captured the most cards on the board.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so say you play a card down, and your opponent plays a card down next to your card that has an arrow pointing to your card. They'll then like battle, and then there's little numbers on the cards that dictate what their like physical or magical power is. And say your opponent beats your card, then you know, your card is theirs. And then yeah, you just take turns doing that, and then whoever has the most cards at the end captured wins. And then what's super cool is the cards are all based on like monsters and airships and even like the summons from Final Fantasy IX and stuff. And it's just a really cool way to pass the time if you're just tired of if there's a boss you're stuck on, or if there's just you're just tired of following the story. You just play some cards and whoop some ass and take over the Tetramaster world.
That's really interesting that you said that you could do it for like a break from the action stuff, because
Yeah.
when I wrote this down, card games and other games, I hate them. I hate them so much. In Final Fantasy IX, it was nonsense. Like it's definitely good for you because you know the rules and everything, but the game does not explain them very well. And there's words and numbers and arrows, and when you say that like you capture your opponent's card or they capture yours, that's not just in that game battle. That's like after the game, you lose your cards if you lose the match.
Well,
And
the only You only did take one card
Oh,
though,
it's
so
only
it's
one.
not that
Okay.
bad.
Well,
Yeah.
still, that's as someone who didn't understand what was happening, and there's a point in the game where you have to enter and win a tournament of that card game. I was stuck for quite a while because it was confusing to me. But also, one reason I don't like it is there was one in Knights of the Old Republic as well in like the first area, and I was like, why would I want to? It's kind of like I get too into the story, and I'm like, I'm trying to save the world here. I'm not going to take time to collect cards and do these card battles. Like in Knights of the Old Republic, it's in like a bar, and there's like a you have to go and find this person or whatever, and he's like, hey, you want to play some cards? And you can just take like an hours long detour to be a card player when you're supposed to be trying to find this Jedi. It just but you saying like, oh, it's a distraction from other things, you could take the time off. I was like, oh, okay, I wish I had more time as an adult to be able to do that.
And honestly, the only way I knew how to play the game as well as I did, because you're right, it does a pretty piss poor job of explaining it to you. But um, there was a strategy guide, a Prima strategy guide that I had. Maybe like a month after I bought the game, I had the strategy guide for it, and it explained everything in pretty rich detail. And um, it's kind of wild that you needed a strategy guide in order to figure out how that shit works, honestly. But hey, that was the late '90s, early 2000s, though.
Strategy guides. Oh my gosh, those don't exist anymore.
I miss them,
I
kind
love
of.
strategy guides. I would read strategy guides just for fun because I wasn't good enough at some of the games. Um, we had one for the Lost World Jurassic Park on PlayStation, and I would read through that because that's a notoriously
Yeah.
difficult game. And
Really?
yeah, yeah, oh yeah, it's super duper difficult. So I would just read through it so that I knew what was happening, and I don't know, it almost read like a movie, like a story. I don't know. I miss strategy guides.
I remember I had one for I think it was Final Fantasy 12, and I would just read on what the different like the summons were super weird in that game. I would read up on what the summons did and how cool they looked, and I'd be like, "Wow, that's so awesome!" Because that the game was too difficult for me when I was like what 13 when that game came out. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. Man, strategy guides. Were there other card games in other games that you played and enjoyed?
Oh yeah, and then the other one was it's called Bind and Divide, and that's in Bravely Default 2.
Oh,
Um, yeah, that one was pretty sweet. And that's also like, entirely a side thing. It has nothing to do with like the story or the main quest, but it's actually entirely missable too. Like you could miss having the card game in there because there's a point where you're in this casino or whatever, and I forget what the desert place is called that you go to, but you have to do this one side quest and unlock this optional job called the Gambler. And yeah, once you do get it, it's actually pretty fun. It's almost like Tetramaster from Final Fantasy IX, except um the goal is to capture the most spaces.
hmm.
So what you'll do is you'll I guess so each card has well the whole thing takes place on like a 5 by 5 grid, and each card has it takes up like a certain number of spaces in a certain pattern. So like it could be maybe like like 3 squares in like a vertical line in the middle or something like that. But when you place that card, it'll take up those spaces. Um, and then your opponent can place a card basically to take those spaces if they need to. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, you just want to take up the most spaces to win, and it was pretty fun. It's usually super quick too, which is good.
Yeah, yeah. Not a lot of card games are quick. That's something that they can go on for a while. It's weird. Why are there card games in other games? Like when they were doing development for Final Fantasy IX, obviously they've got this giant overarching story with all these weapons and attacks and bosses and everything, and they're like, Frank, how's the card game coming along? We got to have that card game in Final Fantasy IX.
They're screaming at him in Japanese, and he's like, what? What?
I don't.
Oh
I've
man.
got a grid. I like because you have to balance it and everything too. You have to like make up the rules and everything. You're making a card game from scratch, and for what? Especially in like Bravely Default 2, where you can totally miss it.
I don't know,
So
like my only excuse for that would be maybe like games back in the day maybe didn't take as much time to make, and so they wanted to
true.
pad it out with content. But Bravely Default 2 is totally not like that. There's a lot of shit to that game. Um, so yeah, I'm stumped for that. It's just wild that
Yeah, it's interesting.
they put in the extra effort to be like, hey, here's a completely balanced card game. Now fuck it up.
Weird, weird. But yeah, like I've said, I've never liked those. There's Gwent in The Witcher, and I ignored it. The guy was like,
Me
do you
too.
want some Gwent cards?" And I was like, "No, I'm trying to go kill a monster. Get out of my face."
There's werewolves, you son of a bitch.
Yeah,
Get out of the way.
villagers are dying. You're like, "Let's play cards." Do you remember? Did you ever see the SpongeBob episode where they had a card stuff? It was one of the newer ones, so
Oh,
it
they
wasn't as
did?
good.
I'm gonna look it up. I did not see that though.
It was I don't remember if they played it or if it was just card collecting, but I just have stuck in my head Mermaid Man. There was a sign that would just say buy more cards. Makes me
Of course,
laugh.
Mermaid Man would. I love that motherfucker
I
so
know.
much.
Oh.
Hey, Bell.
SpongeBob.
What other shows had card games?
Card captors.
Oh my
Our
gosh.
second card captors reference on the podcast.
Don't worry, we'll make more.
I
Yeah,
should watch one episode or find the one episode that's been stuck in my brain since I was a child.
all I remember from that show is that like that cat bear thing with wings, and
Cat
there were cards. Yeah, um,
um
there were cards that were like clear, and
no,
then
nothing.
she was all pink. I don't know. Card Captor, check it out. Highly recommend
um,
it.
what about do you remember the Digimon card game?
Barely. I loved the cards because they looked really, really cool, and I
They were
loved
really cool
Digimon.
looking cards. Yeah, I love Digimon too. I had one card because
Just
I
one.
you couldn't buy those anywhere in Midwest Iowa. No way.
I forget how I even had them. Maybe they were
Yeah, I have
from
no
Chris.
idea.
No, maybe they're from like Walmart. We'd sometimes take these long trips to Sioux Center or Lamar's to go to Walmart, but I never did. The old Digimon card game was so fucking confusing that they had to remake it into this new one nowadays, but um,
Yeah, I
never ever made sense.
yeah I wasn't. All I had was that one card that I loved, and I didn't even bother trying to learn the rules because I just had one card. But anyways, we should probably talk about actual video game card games now that you know our backstory and what makes our brains go happy from cards. Um, to start, I wanted to throw in the granddaddy of all video game card games.
Ooh,
I'm so excited to talk about it. It's Solitaire,
oh shit,
right? Solitaire is probably the most popular video game card game.
it really is. Yeah, that is a good one.
It I actually read a bit about it, and I forgot to bring it up on my web browser, but
Bring it to school real fast.
I know I am. I'm typing
Is
like
there a
you wouldn't
solitaire
believe.
wiki?
Yeah, yeah, there is because it's cool. Let's see.
Of course there is.
No, not the actual game, the Windows one. Microsoft Solitaire. Yeah. Classic Microsoft making things. So yeah, it came out in 1990, 32 years ago. It was made by an intern
Oof.
at Microsoft, and it was made because back then computers didn't have graphics or like mice, before then they were all typey. So they
Oh
included
God.
Solitaire into Windows 3.0 so people could get used to dragging and dropping, double clicking. That's why it was included in there so that
Oh, that's
people.
cool.
Yeah, right? That's really smart. Making a game to get people to learn how to use things.
They they totally should have started paying that intern after that. And they probably the amount of people that I see playing solitaire on a Windows PC back in like the Windows XP days, like good Lord, somebody needs to have gotten paid for that.
that was like the first thing you do when you go to, or at least it was for us, when you go to school and get one of the computers or laptops, you got to see if it's got
I do.
solitaire on it. Microsoft estimated that solitaire has 35 million active monthly players and more than 100 million games played a day, which
Holy shit.
I would totally believe because you can. It's on every computer ever, and it's on phones and everything. I I don't know. I feel like there might not be card games without solitaire. Solitaire did it first, did it best, and thanks solitaire.
Are you talking about card games in terms of like video games or like?
Yeah, because they.
Okay,
I mean, I know it's really simple, but just having the drag and dropping, double clicking, like they basically made the blueprint right away for anyone
they really did.
to follow. Um.
Yeah,
Oh, when you play solitaire, do you do it where it draws 3 cards or where it draws one?
I I'm pretty sure. Well, I'll have to. There's an entry on my list where I talk about kind of like that. I'm just gonna burp it out here. It's Pocket Card Jockey.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about that in episode 4, Hidden Gems. But that one you draw one card and then it kind of just keeps going from there.
Yes, I'm a 1 card man. 3 cards is too difficult.
It
Too
is.
difficult.
I feel
Uh,
like that's.
Go
I feel
on.
like that's kind of like. I feel like that's kind of cheating it a little bit because you kind of always you have those extra cards. You kind of always have a move. Uh, no, go ahead.
Yeah. I've tried 3 card draw and it's just I've never been able. I just like the one because then you can just cycle through until you get what you want. Where 3 you have to like plan ahead because it lays them on top. Oh, annoying. I had
Oh, that makes sense.
a different girlfriend in college, and when
Whoa.
we would chat on Skype, we would play solitaire and
Oh.
like try and compare scores because it kept a high score. And I swear, hers had like a different scoring system than mine because her scores were like always infinitely higher. And she was like, "I'm just better and faster than you," and I'm like, "That's impossible. I'm a video game man. You're a
I'm the
girl."
card game man.
Oh, it's solitaire. I could play solitaire anytime.
Yeah, that's why I love Pocket Card Jockey so much because I mean everybody knows how to play solitaire, and that's why it's so easy to just pick up and be like, oh, I put the fucking ace on either the king or the two, or I put like the five on the four or the six. Ooh, solitaire.
So what's around the card game for Pocket Jockey?
Uh, what do you mean?
Like
Sorry.
what's the game itself? It's not just the card
Oh,
game.
duh. We'll cut that part out. I
Oh,
didn't.
no worries.
But yeah, no. So when you're not playing solitaire, basically you just breed your horse, or like during races, you'll pick up little power up cards. Like it'll give you like a turbo boost in the end stretch of the race, or it'll give you like a carrot which will re-energize your horse and a few other things. And then after races, your horse will level up and get more. It's like it gets like a higher top speed and something else. I forget what the other stat is. Stamina, speed and stamina. And then when it reaches a certain age, like after a race is so many races, you'll put it on the farm to breed with other horses in a Pokemon like fashion, where you can make like the ultimate horse. Um, and then you can unlock different. Well, you can buy different power ups before a race that do certain things, like goggles that make it so forget because I never buy them because it's a waste of money. Um, but no, yeah, it's $7 if you own a 3DS. You need to buy it
Because
because
they're
that
shutting down the shop pretty soon.
yeah, March 2023. It's $7. You might, and it's solitaire. Just buy it.
That's cheaper than a meal at McDonald's currently.
No, yeah, there. Why eat a Big Mac when you could play
Why
horse
why
solitaire?
eat food when you could play horse solitaire? I think that's. I have a game later on that's a genre, but it's based around a card game. I always think that's interesting that they can do that because I don't know. I feel like you could almost make anything into mix it with card games, and that's fun. Um, the first one I wanted to mention though for like big card games to me was Hearthstone or Hearthstone. I'm not sure how
Yeah.
you guys pronounce it. That was after college for me, and that was when I discovered that I was like, oh, this is like Magic but better, and I became obsessed with it for quite a few months. Um, The biggest difference. So Hearthstone is made by Blizzard. It's World of Warcraft based, so it has a bunch of characters and things that I know nothing about because I've never played World of Warcraft. But a couple of key differences between Magic is instead of having to play land cards for mana, you just have mana based on whatever turn it is. So turn 1 you have 5 mana, turn 4 you have 4 mana, etc. up to 10, and after 10 it just sticks at 10. So that's nice. You don't have to hope that you get a, because that's one thing that could happen with Magic is you could have a hand that just doesn't have any lands and you're like, cool, now I can't cast any spells, or you have too much and then you don't have anything else. So that's not really an issue. Instead of having attacking and blocking, the attacker just decides who they attack. They can either attack a defender or they can attack a person. There's no attacking and blocking phases. And you would have a hero or champion or class or whatever, and they had an ability you could use at any point on your turn. I liked a lot of those things. Did you play Hearthstone?
I did. I played quite a bit of it. I remember I really liked. I think yeah, I liked the Ranger
Yep.
and the Druid. The Druid was for sure my favorite. That motherfucker just I was trouncing fools on that game, and then I stopped playing for whatever reason.
The Warlock had the ability of deal 1 damage to yourself to draw a card, and that was like that
That was
was
pretty
crazy
cool.
to me. I was like, what? Why would you do that? But I'm sure it worked for the decks. I stopped playing because the game was way too expensive and there was an obscene amount of RNG, which, for those who don't know, that stands for random number generator, surprisingly. But it's basically like um, if you play a card that says will attack an enemy at random, it uses a random number generator, is what the coding mechanic is called, that decides who it attacks. So it's basically like saying this is a random thing that will happen that isn't in your control. And I found a lot of cards and decks were based around that. And eventually it got to the point where I was playing people and it didn't feel like I was using skill to win. It was basically just gambling. I remember there was a game where I was like, I'm going to play this card, and depending on what it chooses, I'm going to win or lose. It's not up to me. It's going to be completely up to chance.
Ugh, that's why I love. Well, yeah, yeah, that's why I love Yu-Gi-Oh so much because you can. And this isn't really a segue into my next one because I had Master Duel down because I love Yu-Gi-Oh way too much. But yeah, like in Yu-Gi-Oh, you actually build your deck to help you search out certain cards so it's not so random.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, it still kind of is, but you still have a little bit of control over it.
Um, yeah, that and how expensive it was. That was at a time where it was like, hey, if you want to do this tournament, just give us $3 and you can do this and win stuff. Or like they weren't very generous in giving out cards. It always felt like I never had the deck that I actually wanted, and I would face people who had pre-built decks, and that's not fun
Oh
either.
God, yeah. Wasn't it like I remember you earned a free pack after you finished the was it like the story or campaign or whatever for each class, and then after that it was just very, very rare they gave you
Drip
a free
fed.
pack
Yeah,
ever.
yeah, not fun. What's the next game you have?
Yeah, I had Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel.
Ooh, what's that? What's how old? What system is that on? Because there's a billion Yu-Gi-Oh video games.
Oh, the well, yeah, the most recent one is Master Duel. It's the
Okay,
one that's on like Steam and uh, phones and everything now. But yeah, Master Duel, it has like it's still constantly being updated with like newer and newer cards, which is cool. But um yeah, I being me, I love still super duper complicated, and it's only gotten more complicated as time goes on because they keep introducing new mechanics, and what's called the meta is always changing, with the meta being like, I guess, what the pros
yeah,
play. So like an example being like the current meta is that trap cards are too slow. Having to place a card face down and wait a turn before you can play it, it's too slow for people. So now they do what's called hand traps, which are traps you can play from your hand. And and those are just the game is just it's so quick now, and you gotta really like build your deck around those hand traps just in case, because there's some real nasty bastards. Like there's one called what is it, Nibiru, the Primal Being, and it's literally just this fucking meteor that you can play when if one of the like I guess I should say a lot of the higher tier decks that people play in ranked, they'll summon just shit tons of monsters in one turn. Um, so that meteor guy counteracts that. If your opponent plays five or more monsters this turn, you basically tribute all their monsters, whatever the fuck they have. You summon the meteor to your field. They get like a meteor token on their side of the field, and it's it's wild. There's a lot
I
of there's a going.
I played that game. I downloaded it on my phone. I tried it, and it is tough to get into.
It
like you
really is.
like you said, everything's complex, and it feels like every card just has a paragraph of text. And correct me if I'm wrong. Does it have where you can like hold or click on a keyword, and it'll tell you what that keyword does? Or
I
am I?
believe I believe
Because that was the hardest. Yu-Gi-Oh is like combos the game. Everything combos with everything else. And so on an opponent's turn, I would just see cards going, disappearing, reappearing, all this crazy stuff happen, and it was so hard to keep track of. Which one of the things I like most about card games is seeing your opponent's deck and how they do stuff and being like, "Oh, I could do that. I could do
yeah.
that better too." And it was really tough to do on the Yu-Gi-Oh phone game because everything happens so fast and there's paragraphs of text on cards.
Yeah, and there's way too many cards that have those paragraphs of text. Like what the one of like the I'm not sure if it's still meta and high tier, but the Drytrons, they're like these robots from space or whatever. Those motherfuckers, like each card has just so much text on it, but um yeah, what I really like about that game is that there's always a counter for everything. So like
Mm.
if your opponent has some monster that can be destroyed in battle and it cannot be targeted by card effects, like there's always something you could do. Like it's basically down to linguistics. Like they said, it cannot be targeted, so use a card that doesn't target. Use a card that hits everything. It's gone.
Oh, clever.
Or me being me, I don't like to use the more popular archetypes either.
Yep.
I try to find
Same.
ones that are like, yeah, ones that are like really underrated, underutilized, like the Fossil Fusion deck. Holy shit, that thing's
Uh,
wild.
quick question. When that
Yes.
game came out, it became like super popular. Like I believe it was the best-selling Yu-Gi-Oh card game. But why? Do you know why it just like blew up? What was it about this one that was different than the others?
I think it's just because it was free.
Oh, were the
Because
other
like
ones not free?
yeah, but before this, the only other, well, I guess there was Dual Links on the on smartphones, but it was entirely different. It wasn't like actual Yu-Gi-Oh! It was like
Oh.
you were playing duels from the show or whatever. But yeah, before that there were other Yu-Gi-Oh games on like Switch and Xbox and stuff, but they were like $40 a pop or
Oh my
something. But
goodness.
yeah, um, so this one being free was a huge deal, and also it's not at all pay to win because the game just keeps giving you gems for all sorts of shit. It'll be like you'll log in and you'll get a message being like, "Hey, fucking 13 million people downloaded the game. Here's 1,000 gems." And it's like, "Sweet, that's a free 10 fucking packs for any archetype." Like I could build a maybe like a complete Blue Eyes deck if I wanted to.
Yeah, that's a trend in recent games. I'm going to talk about one later, but actually being generous with cards is really nice cuz obviously people are going to keep playing your game if they can get more cards. That's the thing. You mentioned Blue Eyes. I was going to ask, what's the deal with Blue Eyes White Dragon? I don't know anything about it. Is it like the best card, the best monster, or is it just like that was the one that everyone knew?
Yeah, it's just because it's super popular and it's a huge legacy one. Because back in the day, I guess yeah, back in the day when like it's like the two strongest mon or the two most popular monsters I should say were Dark Magician and Blue Eyes White Dragon, mainly just because of the TV show. Because Yugi, the main character, the main protagonist was his ace card was a Dark Magician, and then Kaiba, the bad guy, he used Blue Eyes White Dragon, and they've since then made these huge, ginormous archetypes around like Blue Eyes and Dark Magician and whatnot. They're definitely not the strongest, but they're just popular because people know them from the show and they've been around for so long.
Can I just say, when I didn't watch the show, but like the one time I did watch it, hearing Yugi's voice for the first time sent me spinning. I was so confused because up to that point I had seen Pokemon where he's like, "Hey, I'm Ash Ketchum. I like catching Pokemon," and card captors and Sailor Moon were like, "Hey, we're going on adventures, doing things," and then Yugi's like, "I play this card and it does thing," and I'm like, is he like corrupted? Does he have a demon inside him? Why is that child talking like that?
The usual like actual Yugi, yeah, he's like, hey guys,
Wait, is
I'm
he really?
Yugi. So yeah, Yugi himself is just a regular ass like high school kid. And he's like, hey guys, I'm Yugi. Don't push me into this locker, guys, please. And then what is it? His grandpa found this like what's called the Millennium Puzzle, and Yugi solved the puzzle. So then he became it's wild. He was then possessed by the spirit of the Millennium Puzzle, which was like an ancient pharaoh or something. And the pharaoh's like yeah, like you like I play this card, Exodia. I'm gonna blast your ass to bits. And then that's Yugi in a nutshell.
Oh, okay. I thought that was his voice the whole time was the deep thing. I I love the anime or video game thing of children doing these ridiculous crazy things. Like even in the Pokemon video games, you're just like this 10-year-old child that stops this gang, literally goes to in gold you go to this underground casino and defeats them
Oh yeah.
and you go and capture all these legendary Pokemon. I'm just a child. I got it. Now I have these gods.
Yeah, for real, you go and catch Arceus, who
Yeah.
is the actual it's the he's the actual god of Pokemon. Like it's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Like people are all like all hail, Articuno and all them, the legendary saviors or whatever, and you're just like, well, it's in this ball.
That's I liked this has nothing to do with card games, but the story of Black and White where the main bad guy was like we shouldn't be capturing Pokemon, they should be able to roam free is like a very interesting goal and like one that I could see having an effect instead of being like I'm going to destroy the universe and create a new one.
Yeah, what was it? Yeah, Ruby and Sapphire, they were like,
Oh
we
my
want
gosh.
to destroy the Earth and restart it
Cover
because
it in water.
exactly, yeah, covered in water, and then
Talking about
or yeah, the red one was like, what? We're gonna have these volcanoes erupt and destroy. I don't know.
having the cutscene at the beginning showing Groudon and Kyogre fighting, and like Kyogre or Groudon just having a little piece of land he's on. I'm like, dude, you are very outmatched here.
That's also never made any sense to me.
No,
Ground would get absolutely by Kyogre. I don't understand why they made him ground. It's so
I
stupid.
know, and or at least don't have them fighting each other, or at least give him put Kyogre in the little pool. Don't have him surrounded in the ocean. Poor guy.
Holy shit.
Um,
Um,
I think we're let's take an ad break. Let's thank our sponsors and our advertisers.
I'd like to take this moment to thank Newsly. Newsly is the all-in-one audio super app for iOS and Android. It picks up the most trending articles on the web on topics of your choice at any given moment, reads them to you in a natural human voice. Newsly was created to allow people suffering from dyslexia, visual impairments, and the general public a new and better way to consume content. For the first time ever, the entire web becomes listenable, all in one place. Browse articles from topics you choose and start playing, so stop scrolling and start listening. You can follow specific topics that you like from sports, tech, business, science, Bitcoin, or even the Kardashians, and it'll find you the latest articles and read them to you aloud. And they have podcasts as well. You can explore trending podcasts from over 80 countries, including Aaron and Tommy's Super Pod Saga. I have started using it as my default podcast app, and they have a digital radio. Download and use Newsly for free now from www.newsly.me, that's www.newsly.me, or from the link in the description and use promo code PSAGA, that's promo code PSAGA. I'll put that in the description as well, and you'll receive 1 month free premium subscription. Thanks again, Newsly. So yeah, the sponsor for this week's episode is one of my all-time favorites. That's Major Munch cereal. Remember those Saturday mornings as a kid, waking up early, watching some Saturday morning cartoons, eating your favorite cereal in your PJs, and you know what? Sometimes you get a prize in your breakfast cereal box. Those were pretty cool. You usually get like color changing spoons,
Oh yeah.
little cars, action figures, and stuff like that. But God forbid you had siblings and you had to share, or maybe your sibling found it first and you didn't get a prize. Man, it sucked. Well, Major Munch has solved that. They've come up with the be-all end-all solution. Introducing Major Munch. Oops, all prizes.
What?
That's right. You're getting a cereal box entirely full of cereal box prizes. That there's like CD-ROMs, you get free video games like in the old days. You're getting little toy cars, those color-changing spoons. You get like those little action figures that they used to have back in the 90s. All sorts of cool shit. Yeah, the Salty Sailors, that Major Munch Cereal Co., they've come up with, yeah, like I said, the be-all, end-all solution. You know, everybody gets a prize. Hell, there's an entire... You can give out to your friends if you want to. Why not?
Does it have a little bag of cereal inside? Like a tiny little thing?
Absolutely not.
Oh.
It's all prizes, Tommy. You got magic 8 balls, mini yo-yos, and if you're lucky, you'll get a fucking cap gun, or real gun maybe, who knows. Yeah, that's right, it's Major Munch. So good that it doesn't count as breakfast.
Thanks,
Major Munch all prizes do not contain any cereal, therefore it has no nutritional value and should not be consumed. Major Munch is not responsible for any health issues caused by contents being consumed. Batteries not included, ready to eat for everyone, drink responsibly.
Thanks, Major Munch.
Thank you, Major Munch.
You've given me so many memories that I just want to talk about. Do you remember those little tiny boxes of cereal that were like 2 spoonfuls, and it was like that didn't fill me up at all?
Oh, and you can sometimes get them at like small diners, like
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, those sucked.
Um,
I want Apple Jacks real bad now.
I never liked Apple Jacks. Honeycombs are like a
Ooh,
sleeper hit for cereal.
dude, Cinnamon Toast Crunch is forever
Yeah.
my favorite. Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Check it out.
Lucky Charms, really good.
Mm.
Honey Nut Cheerios are good.
Oh, Cocoa Pebbles. Cocoa
Nope,
Pebbles.
I don't like Cocoa Pebbles.
What the
It makes the
fuck,
milk
Tommy?
taste gross.
It makes it taste like chocolate. What are you
It
talking?
does
Do you
not taste like
milk?
chocolate milk. You put chocolate milk next to the milk left over from cocoa, whatever, and it's night and day. Not even close.
Oh, all right. We'll move on to the next
Yeah,
topic.
yeah. Let's get off this before we just the podcast is over. We come to
No more Aaron and Tommy.
I just wanted to. I feel like after Hearthstone was a big hit, a really, really big, huge hit.
Oh God, yeah.
And I feel like after that, companies tried putting their own twist on it. And I feel like at the same time, I was searching for something that would fill that hole. Because I did like Hearthstone. It's just, it outgrew me and wasn't what I wanted it to be. So I just wanted to mention a couple of games that I experimented with and did interesting things. One was Elder Scrolls Legends, the Elder Scrolls card game. And it was short-lived. I mean, it might still be going. I'm sure you can still download it, but it definitely didn't do what they wanted it to do. But the main feature differentiating it was lanes. The battle arena was split down the middle by a line, and there was a left lane and a right lane. So cards could either only be played on one side, or they could only attack a certain side, or you could do a spell to switch one from the other side. And you could only attack or block creatures that are in your lane. So if your enemy has a creature in a lane and you don't, you can't block it. And
What the hell?
yeah, it's a neat idea, but really didn't serve any greater purpose. It was just kind of like, this is how we differentiate ourselves, but it didn't. And it added some mechanics, it added some like intrigue, but it just really, it was just there. It wasn't like a main thing like another game I'll talk about later. I also experimented with the actual Gwent version, the standalone Gwent. And that, have you ever played Gwent?
I played a little bit of it on like on The Witcher 3, and I never could make any sense of it. I was
It's
like all
weird.
right at it.
It's
Yeah.
it's something. It's completely different than any other card game. There's no battling your opponent. There's no health or anything. It's just it's 3 rounds, and whoever has the most points at the end of each round wins that round. And so your cards are just things that give you points or take away points. I didn't play a lot of it because it was it was a totally different part of my brain. Like Magic the Gathering hardwired my brain to understand card games a certain way, and Gwent was just like totally different. I couldn't carry anything over from that, so it was like learning how to ride my bike again. But again, I appreciated that they did interesting things. That's what I wanted, but it didn't stick with me.
Oh man, I'm getting all sorts of memories of all the other mobile card games I played.
Such as?
Oh man, it was called Lies of Astaroth. Did you ever play that?
Nope.
Oh man, okay, so I really forget exactly how you played it, but I remember you played. What was it? So you play each person plays down one card at a time, and then they battle. And basically, oh, I remember nothing about it, but it was like I remember getting really into it, and like I spent not a lot of money, but like a decent amount on it. But that was okay. My next actual one that I had down, and it's from a series that I love to death, and that's SteamWorld Quest.
Yes, I knew you were going to talk about
Yeah,
this one.
yeah. So the whole thing isn't necessarily a card game. Like it's like a turn-based like adventure RPG kind of thing, but the combat is what uses the cards. And essentially each character is there's like 6 characters, I believe, and each character is no 5. Each character is completely different. They use their own decks. They have their own cards that they can use, and they have their own different play styles. Like the main character Armilly, she's like a knight, so she has like high damage output and like pretty rounded out stats. There's like Copernica, who's like a mage and does a lot of like elemental damage and stuff. Um, was it Galeo? He's like your support dude. Or I guess tank support. He heals. He'll give you a shield. Uh, get rid of status ailments and stuff like that. Oric is like a samurai. And he's like another like high damage dealer. His attacks will sometimes hit more than once per turn, and he can like change masks to have different abilities. Like there's one where he regains HP at the end of a turn or something like that. We'll cut out that we'll cut out that voice crackle right there. That was wild. Um, and then there's Terra and Thane. Like they're twins that fight at the same time. But yeah, one twin focuses more on like dealing arcane damage with like or I guess arcane like magical damage, whereas the other one will do like physical damage and steel and inflicts like status ailments and stuff like that. Um, but essentially how it goes is like your basic attacks will rack up steam, I guess, and you use certain amounts of steam to use like your special attacks. And what's cool is if you chain together attacks like from the same character, like I think it's like 3 in a row, they'll do like their like extra special move, which does certain things depending on what weapon you have equipped. And it's a super fun game if you like turn-based RPGs and or card games. It's super duper fun.
And you said that everyone has their own deck. Do you get cards throughout playing, or is their deck set throughout?
Nope, you get more and more cards as the game goes on. You can buy
Nice.
them from stores. They'll get them from like story events or like you'll find them in like chests or something. You can even craft more cards. Um, it's crazy. And I think there's a max you can have in their deck, so you can't have just like this ridiculous 60 card deck. I think it's like 12 cards or something.
I remember when I learned like you don't want to have the maximum amount of cards. Well, that was in the next game I wanted to talk about, so I'll just bring it up when I get there. It very similar to SteamWorld Quest is Slay the Spire, which I
Yeah.
would consider one of the best games ever made.
Oh yeah. Oh
definitely,
God, yeah.
definitely one of the most influential card games ever. It is a deck building roguelike, which I believe it's almost become a meme at this point, where like when you describe a game, you describe the genres and you're like, and it's a deck building roguelike as well, because after Slay the Spire came out, everyone tried to do something like that.
That's very true.
But a roguelike, for those that don't know, it's so like in Mario levels, you start from 1-1 and you get to 8-4, and you can retry it however you want. A roguelike, there's a beginning and the end, but if you die on the way, you have to start over from the very beginning. and it's about collecting. Usually, it's about collecting weapons, armor, spells, whatever, to make yourself stronger. But when you start at the beginning, you don't have any of that. You start at the very beginning every time. And Slay the Spire was a twist because it was a deck builder. It uses cards. We love cards.
Hell
And
yeah.
it's just it's incredible. It's got four classes now. It started with three, and each of them is like so super unique. But beyond, like, there's the warrior, which focuses on attacking. There's the rogue. There's the reject, which is like a robot that, and they're all like dramatically different. And what I also love is each run you can focus on something different. Like the rogue, you can focus on daggers and creating tons of daggers to do tons of small amounts of damage, or you can focus on poison to try and build poison on the enemy to make them lose health that way. And you can just kind of switch on the fly based on what cards you stumble across or what power-ups you stumble across. It's just a really, really well-designed game from beginning to end.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite parts was that like each character kind of has like I think it's like two or three different play styles.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the coolest was for the what was the first one? You get the Ironclad,
Warrior? Yeah,
maybe
Ironclad. There you go.
Ironclad. You can do one of my favorite ones to do. I think I messaged you about this one time. It was there's one card that like whenever you take damage, you gain strength,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Yep.
you could combo that with this one card that makes it so that like every turn you take a certain amount of damage, but then you do damage to every enemy on the screen, and then it would combo into like a few other things as well. But there were a lot of really easy ways to like synergize cards together, and if you really like thought about different relic and card combinations, it was God damn,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was too good.
The best part was just stumbling upon a combo that you didn't know existed. Like there was one card that I saw where it was like do damage equal to your shield, your block or whatever, and I was like,
Oh yeah.
why would I ever do that? That's stupid. And then I got a relic that was like your shield doesn't go away at the end of your turn, so it just continuously builds over time. And so I was like,
And
oh,
then
this makes sense.
you can get a power card that makes it so you gain like three block at the start of
Yeah,
every turn,
yeah,
and you can keep comboing that with there was another card that made it so that when you attack you gain that much block back or something like that, and oh my
yeah,
god.
yeah. It was
Yeah.
combos that you just discover that you wouldn't expect, or um, like the what's his name? The reject. He
Yep.
has orb slots, so you can create orbs with your cards. And there's an orb called Darkness, which is like kind of difficult to use right because it doesn't do anything unless you get more orbs. But I had a deck that was like creating dark orbs all the time, and I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense now. This is powerful. It just did a really good job of that. And I know you haven't quite beaten it with every character, right?
No, I think I still need to beat it with whatever the new character is called, I forget.
The Watcher, I think.
Watcher. Yeah,
I think.
I got really really close with that guy, and I lost because I was stupid.
The Watcher is hard. The Watcher is like really complex and hurts my brain to try and figure out. But what I wanted to say is like how you put like a ton of hours into the game still though, right? Because it's
A
just fun to
ton.
play. Even
Yep.
beyond just the regular mode, there's like an insane amount of content, more than you would ever expect. There's a an optional hard mode that you can do after you beat the game with every character that I love how they manage that. There's an ascension mode for each class where like you start at ascension level 1 and it makes the game a little bit more difficult, and when you beat it with that character you unlock ascension level 2, which makes it a little more difficult. And there's that goes like up to 20. I never finished nearly all the ascensions, but there's just tons of content, and it's really well made and has influenced everything. Like Hearthstone has a mode like Slay the Spire. Legends of Runeterra, which I'm going to talk about later, has a mode that's like Slay the Spire. You see its influences everywhere, and it was made by like 2 to 5 people, and it was
Really?
their first and only game. They just beyond hit it out of the park on their first try.
That's really cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I They haven't made anything since, but I'm insanely excited to see whatever the heck it could be because nailed it.
Oh man. Speaking of Speaking of nailed it. The next one I have is it's SNK versus Capcom Card Fighters Clash.
Whoa, that's a thing. I've heard SNK versus Capcom, but I thought it was just a fighting game.
Yeah, this one's totally separate from that. This one, yeah, it's a card game, and like and there's two different versions, kind of like one version is the SNK version, and the other one is the Capcom version. Yeah, that was for the forever awesome Neo Geo Pocket Color.
Oh,
I never owned one,
well,
but I
that
love that
explains
goddamn
why I
thing.
haven't heard of it.
But it is also on the Switch now, for sure.
Huh.
Um, but yeah, basically you can build your deck around. Um, I guess you can build it with certain SNK or Capcom characters, and you can kind of build, I guess, like a deck around a certain strategy. But I haven't gotten very far in it to be able to do that. But so what's cool is like each turn you'll take turns placing one character, and you can only have a max of three characters at a time. But obviously, when one dies in combat, you can place it with another one. And you can do what's called a backup, where like only certain characters can be a backup to certain character. Like an example being Ryu from Street Fighter. One of his backups could be Chun-Li, and that backup will give them more power and will give them like another certain ability in battle. And what was also really cool about it was that there's like a big story around it too, rather than it being like, hey, you're just playing cards forever. You basically go to these different what are they called? I forget what exactly they're called, but these different big
Biomes.
buildings. Yeah, kind of like that. You go to these different areas and you beat all these different like masters at the game, and each one uses a different kind of deck. And once you beat them, you basically become like the Pokemon champion of this game, essentially. And um, oh, it's really cool because like for a game on a handheld from '99, the cards are really detailed. It's if you ever look them up, they're really cool.
Yeah, that's surprising. I that's I don't know if you do the same thing, but just whenever I experience a new card game, just figuring out how it works and how the rules are and the mechanics and everything, I love that.
Oh God, yeah, and especially if it's one where it's like easy to learn but difficult to master. That's my kind of shit. I hate when it's like when it's too easy to just get super duper far.
Yeah, totally. How many more games did you have? Because I have one left, but it's going to be a long one. So if you have others, you can go first.
No, that was it for me.
Oh, okay,
Or
perfect.
I guess I have maybe. Well, no, I don't know a whole lot about it. No, we can just this next one will be the last one.
Okay. Um, so yeah, my search for the next card game because Magic made me feel good, Hearthstone made me feel good, and then it was like mix like little tastes of things that weren't quite there, and then I discovered the card game to end all card games for me, Legends of Runeterra.
Oh
Ooh,
yeah,
yay! I think it is the best made card game of all the card games. I will go to my grave saying that unless a new one comes out before I die. But yeah, it's whew, it is quite a beast. Like you talked about easy to learn, difficult to master. Runeterra is not easy to learn. Not
Ugh.
not at all. It is the most mechanically dense card game I've ever played. It is absurd how much is going on. But some of the basics that make it unique and also better, in my opinion, you remember Hearthstone was like no lands, you get one mana per turn. Uh,
Yeah.
Runeterra does that, but with a twist. You get one mana per turn, but any unspent mana on a turn goes into what's called your spell pool for mana. So, like, let's say your first turn you have one mana and you don't use it. On turn two, you'll have two regular mana, and that one mana from before goes into your spell mana. So on turn two, you can cast a 3 cost spell if you want. It's so there's like some strategy around that being like, oh, I've got this big card. If I don't spend any mana this turn, I can do it next turn, and that's super cool.
That is really cool.
Um, Hearthstone, you only played cards on your turn. On your opponent's turn, you could do nothing but watch. In Runeterra, every turn, everyone's mana gets refilled, and you take turns playing cards. So whoever's on attack will play a card, then the other person plays a card, then you play a card, on and on and on. And that back and forth goes into their spell cards because their spell cards have different speeds. Everyone, stick with me here. So spell cards either have burst, fast, or slow speed. Burst speed, when you play it, it happens. If you play a fast card, your opponent can counter that with another fast card. But
Oh, makes sense.
they can't counter it with a slow card because it's too slow. If you play a slow card, that can be countered by another slow card or a fast card or a burst card. So obviously, the slow cards are the biggest and strongest, but the opponent can counter them pretty easily. Or burst cards don't do as much, but they go instantly. So you'll have like it's such a great game for countering a person and seeing what they're doing and being like, I'm gonna stop that right now, instead of Hearthstone being like, I must watch as I die and there's nothing I can do. I love that. The other big mechanic is champion cards. Oh, Legends of Runeterra is based in the League of Legends universe, which I know nothing about. Absolutely nothing. This is my introduction to League of Legends. And so the champion cards are like the playable people in League of Legends. And you can have 2 champions per deck. They're in general stronger than the regular creatures or people. And they have unique requirements to level them up, making them even more powerful. Basically, your champions are like what you need to level up to win the game. Like, one of the ones I like is Teemo. He's a little 1/1 creature, so he can't really do anything. But if he attacks the enemy, he puts poison puff caps, is what they're called, in the enemy deck. And when he attacks, he'll put 5 of them in there every time. When you plant 15 of them, he levels up and he becomes a level 2 champion or whatever. Then, whenever he attacks, instead of planting 5, he doubles them. And he does that every single time he attacks. So it's essentially like, if you can get your champion to level up, they do something super cool that wins you the game. And that just builds into that counterplay that I was mentioning earlier. So you'll see the enemy champion, you can see what he needs to do to level up, and you have to be like, okay, what do I have that can counter that? What can I do to stop him from leveling up? And you'll try something and they'll counter it and you counter it back. I remember one time I had like a string of 5 spells countering back and forth just to stop a spell from happening. It's insanely difficult to get into. I'm not going to be like, go out there right now, you'll love it. It takes a lot of time and a lot of learning to understand all the mechanics. And they're still updating it every few months with new cards and new mechanics. They never stop introducing new mechanics. And it's a lot to get into, but when you do understand everything and figure everything out, it fits together in a way that just no other game does, and it just feels so insanely good to play, to run your deck and counter the opponent's deck. So good.
I'm gonna have to try to give that another shot. I haven't played that in almost a year.
I get into it every once in a while and become obsessed, and then I have to stop because it takes up too much of my time.
That's me with Master Duel. Like I'll play it, whoop ass, and really get into it, and then I'll get my ass whipped in ranked because
Yeah.
the high tier meta decks are just too good, just unfair, and then I'll just get mad and stop playing.
Yeah. Oh, a couple other things I forgot to mention that makes Runeterra good. The RNG is extremely minimal. There are only a handful of cards that deal with randomness. I would say like fewer than 5% of the cards feature RNG. So there's not that random chance of things going right. And if there are cards with that, just kick them out of your deck. There's a deck I like that featured a card with RNG, and it wasn't working for me. So I was like, I'm just not going to use it. And like with Master Duel, they're very, very generous in giving you cards and currencies to buy cards. After playing for a month, you can basically get any card or deck you want. Like whenever an expansion comes out, I just get all the decks or all the cards from them. It's no problem, and that's great.
That's hell yeah. That's do you actually build a deck though, or is it like Hearthstone where you just add cards to a deck that don't
No,
help you
you
like
can.
search or anything like that?
They have like quote unquote pre-made decks. They're not. It doesn't show you them in the game, but if you Google them, they're like, here's the champions and here's the cards that synergize with that champion, and you're like, okay, so I just need to get all of these and then I'll have it.
That's cool. Right on.
Yeah, I love it. And I don't know if there will ever be a card game that is better than Legends of Runeterra for me personally, because it like takes everything I loved about Magic and Hearthstone and cranks it up to 11.
Man, as you were talking, I just I just re-downloaded that fucking Lies of Astaroth game, and I forget what the hell my username and stuff is.
Oh
Oh
no.
man,
So that's all the card games in existence, right? We talked about them all.
that's all of them. If anybody else finds more, I mean, if on the off chance you do find more, 'cause we talked about everything, yeah, you can always email them to us, or how can they get those to us, Tommy?
We have an email address, superpodsaga@gmail.com. We also like Twitter. You can follow us at superpodsaga. What's our Instagram name?
It's just Super Pod Saga.
Gosh, I love that we got that name. That makes me feel good. We're not like Superpod Saga 23. We're the Superpod Saga.
Thank God.
And there's a
We
Facebook
also,
page.
yep, we have a Facebook page. And were we gonna make a TikTok or no?
Yeah, I could probably do that today. I've got the time
Okay.
today.
Okay,
So
okay.
look forward to that.
And what was it you said you were gonna do for like the 100 followers thing if you had time?
It was a
Or did you
TikTok.
not get
It
to
was
it?
a special TikTok. I can still do it.
Okay, no worries.
But yeah, what's going to be our topic for next week since you get a pick?
This, oh, man, it was a tough choice. But yeah, we'll go. We might as well go puzzle games.
Yay! Oh, I'm excited. Ooh, that's going to be I feel like that might be a longer discussion than this one because with card games we have the ones that we love and we always play, but like there's so many puzzle games out there.
Yeah, and we'll jot down probably like what, five of our
Seven
favorites, and then
700.
7 million.
So look
Oh
forward to that,
man.
people. Check in next week. Anything else you want to add, Aaron?
No, just keep interacting with us, and we'll interact with you, and that's it.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone. Bye.
Bye.